The good news is we only need to become financially independent once. And then the job becomes making sure that we don't lose our financial independence. So in today's video, I want to share with you 10 ways that millionaires go broke so that we don't make the same mistakes. Going to start off with a article by Go Banking Rates, and it's called Six Financial Pitfalls of Rich People Who Became Poor. I don't want any of us to become poor once we're financially independent. And the first one is, unfortunately, they make bad investments. Maybe they're over concentrated in something that they think is going to work, or they take a bet, a flyer on something that's more of a gamble than an investment. And they over concentrate themselves, right? I mean, if you make an investment in something that's 1 or 2% of your portfolio because you really believe in it and you're wrong, you're probably still going to be okay. It's going to be painful, but you're probably still okay. But if you put a inordinate amount in that investment and you're wrong, it could really hurt you. Okay, the next one is poor financial planning, according to the article. So they don't have a plan. And if you don't have a plan, you don't know how much you can spend. And you may be unknowingly putting your financial independence at risk. And that's why I think it's important all of us have a plan. The gold standard for that is to work with a fiduciary financial advisor. I know a lot of my audience is not going to use that if because they charge 1% a year. And mea culpa, I was a financial advisor for over 20 years. So if that's you, I urge you to use software that's designed to help you come up with a financial plan yourself. If that financial plan is for saving for retirement, or if you've already saved enough money to make sure you know how much you can spend so you don't unknowingly put your financial future at risk. And also, importantly, so you don't unnecessarily sacrifice. The software that I like to help you do that is called Bolden. It used to be called New Retirement. You can find it at this link here. I am an affiliate, so if you use this link, you'll be supporting the channel. Thank you. Okay, the next one is overspending. And again, this is, for rich people. So rich people thinking, hey, I'm financially independent, I'm making a lot of money, and they start overspending. And even though they're bringing in a lot of money, they're also spending a lot of money. And this is much more common than people think. In fact, in the United States, over half of all families that make $100,000 a year or more don't save a dime. And if you're in that situation, I urge you to save what you can. And our parents taught us to save 10% a year. I wish that was still true, but unless you have access to a pension through work, which, my parents taught me, save 10% and you'll be fine. But in today's world, I think we need to strive to save as close to 15 or even better, 20% as possible. So be careful with the overspending. The next one is scams. And this is, we're all potential targets for scams. And as we get older, we become more of a target because in general, our net worth increases. But certainly wealthy people that are flaunting their wealth, people that it's obvious that, they're spending a lot of money. I think they're more they're more likely to be targeted for a scam, maybe from people that they know. So, it only takes one lapse moment in making a mistake, sharing a password, sharing a code, yeah, logging in at the wrong time, at the wrong place on public Wi-Fi, something like that. So be careful. And if you are reusing your passwords, and I know a lot of us are, I urge you to think about using a password manager. They're super affordable. The password manager I use is $50 or $60 a year for my family. We each have our own accounts, so it's very affordable. It does take a different mindset to start using it, but in today's world, if we lose control of one password and we're reusing that at multiple financial sites, that could quickly cause a catastrophe for us. Okay, the next one is lack of financial savviness. Mark Twain has a saying that it ain't what you don't know that gets you in trouble. It's what you know for sure that just ain't true. that gets you in trouble. And lack of financial savvy, I think a lot of us feel like, "Oh, I can do this." And candidly, a lot financial advisors have gotten a bad rap in the press, and it is true that 80 or 90% of financial managers don't beat the S&P 500, but I would argue that's not necessarily a financial manager's job. A financial manager's job is to help you come up with a game plan to reach your life goals, and then to create a portfolio that has a high likelihood of achieving that while taking as little risk as possible. So it's very different than just, well, whatever the top 500 market cap companies get, I'm happy with that return. And remember that the top 3 companies represent about 20% of the S&P 500. As I record this, those companies are Apple, Nvidia, and Microsoft, and that's 20% as I record this of the S&P 500. Another thing I want to share with you is this is a report by Goldman Sachs, and they did a retirement study, and they found that nearly half of the working respondents, 47%, managed their own accounts, but only 13% correctly managed all of the financial literacy questions. Now, it's really common in a marriage or a partnership for one person to manage the money for both partners. Um, and if that's you, I urge you to be cautious. And you're gonna, as I'll share later in this video, the things that can very quickly cause people to derail their plans and lose money are emotional things that we're just as human beings subject to. So stay to the end. I'm going to share what those are. Okay. Number 6, according to this Go Banking rate, and then I'm going to share my top 4 to bring us to the top 10. Number 6 is being too generous. Where I saw this when I was working as a financial advisor is people being too generous with their adult children that were perfectly capable of taking care of themselves. Maybe they wanted to help their child buy their first house, or go back to grad school, or buy a nice new car when they graduate college. And that's fine if you have more than enough. But I don't want you to put your financial security at risk because they have loans for homes. They're called mortgages. They have loans for cars, but you know what they don't have loans for? They don't have loans for our retirement. So make sure you're not putting that at risk. Okay, my 4 that I want to add to this list. So number 7 is being a forced seller in a down market. And there's a couple ways we get there. One is we just need the cash for our living expenses in retirement. And that's one of the reasons you have a portfolio allocation of both stocks and bonds. Hopefully, your bonds aren't down when your stocks are down. And a lot of people would look at their portfolio and say, hey, Azul, I'm 50-50. I'm half in stocks, I'm half in bonds, or 70-30, 70% stocks, 30% in bonds. I urge you to think about this a different way, and that is, how many years worth of living expenses do you have in stable, secure bonds? And be careful with bonds because they can be risky. Okay. The next one is related to being a forced seller in a down market, and that is not realizing that your risk tolerance might change pretty dramatically once you're retired and you're no longer bringing new money in. Oftentimes people will visit with a financial advisor and say, hey, I stayed the course with my asset allocation during the dot-com bubble burst. I stayed the course during the great financial crisis, 2008, 2009. I stayed the course when COVID happened. And those are great things, and they weren't easy to stay the course and stay invested with your long-term allocation. So if you did that, congratulations. But just because you were able to do that when you're working doesn't mean you might be able to. But know that the level of worrying, my experience, once you don't have new money coming in, once you cannot invest, take advantage of downturns and have new money coming in, the 10, 15, 20% that you're saving from work, and you don't have that coming in to invest at, low prices when the market goes down, and it becomes your total nest egg, it can feel very different, a market downturn. Okay. The next mistake I see people make is not test driving their expenses before they retire. So doing what you can to test drive those expenses. If you're currently living, I'm just making up a number, on $10,000 a month, and you say, "Well, I think we can live on $8,000 a month." It's one thing to say it, it's another thing to live it. So I urge you to try to emulate that as much as you can before you retire, because you may find out, you know what, I'd rather work a couple more years than cut back to whatever that number is that you're test driving. Okay. And then the number 10 is the lack of a plan. Now, I have a really important bonus that I'm going to share, more important than everything else I've shared. So stick with me. Lack of a plan. I'm just reiterating what that Go Banking Rate article said about not having a plan. I urge you to have a plan, whether you do it yourself or you use Bold. And again, here's the link. But the most important one is understanding that your health is much more important than your wealth. What do you gain if you save up all this money and you have the financial resources to go do fun things? What do you gain if you don't have the health to go do those things? We can only control so much, but I urge you to invest both the time and the money necessary to stay healthy, to eat as healthfully as you can, and to stay as fit as you can. If you enjoyed this video, the YouTube algorithm says this is the next video of mine, specifically for you, that you should think about watching next. Thanks for watching this one. Bye-bye.